Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my performance review of the Rigorer AR3. So this is Austin Reaves' third signature shoe with Rigorer, and if you guys didn't know, the AR1 was actually a very nice performer. I really like playing that shoe, but it had a really stiff feel, right? The AR2 still had a really stiff feel, but a little bit more flexible, and the AR2 also was one of my favorite hoop shoes of the past year. And then now we got the AR3. So I did get this over at Kickzone, so if you guys do want to cop, I try to leave in the free link in the description box. If you do choose to get this shoe, it does help me out if you buy it through the free link in the description box. And as always, thank you guys so much for all the support. In terms of price, it retails for 120 bucks over at Kickzone, but you can get some colorways for around 107 bucks, right? But also, if you go on like the official Rigorer.com site, you can get it on crazy sales, but I believe they do have some shipping costs as well. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, if you guys also do have any questions, you guys can always DM me over at Instagram. I try to get to all the DMs. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit late in replying, but yeah, let's get it started off with the Tracciones. In this colorway, we have like a solid white and a solid black rubber outsole, and we pretty much have like a herringbone traction pattern going throughout the entire outsole as well. And how is the traction? The traction is phenomenal if you're playing on a clean court, right? When I was playing on like the usually clean courts over at LA Fitness, I had a really nice time because the bite was phenomenal. I wouldn't say it's like super duper top tier. It's like super hard instantaneous stop, like, you know, like GCU or RPU or Flow, you know what I mean? But it still has a really nice solid bite for a rubber compound, right? Also, it has a nice loud hyper squeak, which has nothing to do with performance. But if you like to have a nice squeak in your hoop shoes, this shoe is pretty loud. I wouldn't say it's like it screams and it's like super duper loud, for example like the Wild 12 or something like that, but again, it still has a nice squeak. And now moving on to the dust performance, this shoe picks up dust. You know what I mean? I feel like, you know, with the grooves that are like a little bit thicker, you know what I mean? There's a little bit of like a flat surface on top of the herringbone. You see how it's like black on this like white outsole? That's where the dust would get stuck a little bit, you know what I mean? So I actually picked up dust pretty dang quickly. When I was playing on like a slightly dusty court, I wouldn't mind it too much, you know what I mean? Because it was a very easy wipe, and then I had a really good stop again. However, once I started playing on like 24-hour fitness courts, which are usually a lot dirtier, or like where I am, the 24-hour courts are a little bit dirtier, and then the LA Fitness, they actually clean it. I don't know why, but some of you guys are saying like it's a little bit different for you guys. But anyways, for me, the 24-hour fitness courts are a little bit dustier, you know what I mean? So yeah, it was picking up a good amount of dust on the 24-hour fitness courts where it's a little bit dirtier, like moderate dust to like really heavy dust. It was picking up dust extremely quickly, and it was never like super dangerous or anything like that. I never felt like super unsafe, but like I was sliding around a lot, you know what I mean? And again, it picked that up pretty quickly. When I was playing on the moderately dusty courts, like when I did an easy wipe though, like it's a very easy wipe though. Like I wouldn't have to like really get in there. It's just a very easy swipe or two, and then it would get clean again, and I had a really good stop. But then I would have to, you know, obviously wipe very quickly again, you know what I mean? So that was really annoying. And usually I don't mind wiping, but then like I had to wipe a lot on like a moderately dusty court to a really heavily dusty court. So just be careful with that. If you don't mind the wiping, then you should be fine. But again, just keep in mind you're gonna need to wipe a lot on like the moderate to a really heavily dusty court. So that kind of sucks, but again, like on the lightly dusty courts, I was fine, you know, just again keeping up with the wipes, you know what I mean? So there's that. Moving on to the durability. Durability seems really freaking good though. Like the grooves are, like I said, really thick, the rubber is really hard, and the grooves are pretty deep as well. So you should be fine on the outdoor court. If you're gonna be worried about durability, you should be fine here in the AR3s, right? So the traction overall, really nice until I was playing on like a super dusty court, then it got pretty bad, right? So there is a traction there. Moving on to the heel to toe transition. Overall, it's a pretty smooth feel. I would definitely say it has a little bit more of a stiffer feel than like a lot of Nike hoop shoes, like guard shoes, you're from Nike, right? But still, like comparing it to a lot of shoes that I'm playing in, like for example in like Chinese shoe companies that have like a carbon fiber plate, it's a lot softer than that, you know what I mean? So here in the heel, although it is very caged, right, you can see all this cage, it still allows for a little bit of compression, so it's not as clunky as you would think, but it's a little bit clunky, just a tiny bit if I'm nitpicking, but overall it's still like pretty smooth, right? Also, you have a nice curved shape, so it's pretty smooth here in the heel, and then we have a pretty nice curved shape here in the forefoot. So just the overall shape feels pretty nice. You have a nice rocker motion, smooth here in the heel, nice compression, right? But also here in the forefoot, it has a little bit of a stiffer feel you know, as far in terms of like the forefoot flexibility goes, right? I can kind of flex the forefoot a little bit, right? For the Sabrinas and like the Luka 4s, Tatum 4s, I can literally just do it with one finger. And also torsion support is just really, really, you know what I mean? It's really flexible, right? The AR3, it's a little bit stiffer, you know, and also has a little bit more of a springier feel. So when you're going out of your first step, you know, triple thread and stuff like that, or just doing heel dominant strides down the court, it feels a little bit springier, just a tiny bit. You know what I mean? Of course, again, comparing it to like the Wild 12, which has like a full-length carbon fiber plate, you know, the Gamma 1s and stuff like that, it's definitely nowhere near as explosive feeling, but it definitely does have a stiffer feel than, again, a lot of shoes from like Nike. So there is a heel to toe transition there. Moving on to the cushioning setup. So the cushioning setup is pretty dang nice, right? And for the price, I would say it's pretty nice, right? So it is using full-length Showtime foam, and here on the medial side you can see it's fully exposed. It looks pretty similar to Boost, you know. So just pressing it, it's extremely soft here on the medial side, and on the lateral side we have just a little sliver of the actual midsole exposed right over here, and also here in the heel. Look at that. Just a tiny bit on the lateral and medial sides of the heel here, right? So yeah, like I said, even though it is pretty caged, you do have a little bit of compression here in the heel. So that feels kind of comfortable, just a little bit, right? But then the thing that I really like the most about this shoe is the underfoot cushion, right? So first of all, the insole is pretty dang nice. They are using, or at least they're saying, it's a super critical insole. It's kind of thin though, so it's not like super duper nice, but then it has a little bit more of a rubbery texture and rubbery feel as opposed to something like an Ortholite foam, you know what I mean? So that feels kind of nice, but then underneath that we do have a very fine mesh material for the struggle board, and then especially in the heel, it's really soft, you know what I mean? Of course, like if you guys didn't see the actual comparison video, it is a little bit less than the AR2, however it's still soft, right? So again, here in the heel, we not only does the midsole have a little bit of compression, but also I can feel my heel digging into the actual foam because of the softer struggle board. So combining both of those, it feels really nice. However, again, it's not like super duper thick and super duper soft, so it doesn't feel like super mushy. It has a little bit more of a stiffer, more responsive feel, again, compared to like the AR2. But comparing it to like the Sabrina 3, it's definitely way softer, you know. The Sabrina 3, first of all, the heel compression, I would say maybe it's a little bit less than the AR3, but also the actual underfoot cushion, especially in the heel, is a little bit stiffer as well. So I really like that. Also, again, for heel strikes, I was good to go. It didn't hurt my heel or my foot at all. And of course, here in the forefoot, does get a little bit more stiff, a little bit more dead, but also, the actual core feel is a little bit better here in the AR3 compared to the AR2, right? So, in terms of, you know, core feel compared to the Sabrina 3, it's a little bit higher up off the ground though, just a tiny bit. But again, you do get better impact protection, you get better, it's like softness, like underfoot softness as well. It's just a little bit more comfortable. So, yeah. One thing, however, is that it's not super bouncy though. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like super bouncy. There's a little bit of rebound back. I would say it's more like soft compared to like the AR2. But overall, again, it has a responsive feel where it doesn't feel too mushy, but it's still comfortable for the underfoot cushion. Has good impact protection and a little bit of heel compression. So overall, really nice cushioning setup, and I really enjoyed the cushioning setup here in the AR3. Now moving on to the upper, so they're saying it's a woven material pretty much, but yeah, it's kind of like a lino weave material, and you can see that it's exposed here just a tiny bit on top of the toe box. We do have some crazy overlays as well here in the toe box too, you know. So yeah, it's really thin there, and I actually don't really think you'll have any issues with durability though, because like here on the lateral side, like I see a lot of shoes or a lot of people that wear the Kobe 8s especially, a lot of their shoes are ripping right over here. You know what I mean? Because it's like a really soft mesh material. But then with the AR3, you have these kind of like overlays, like these, although it's like kind of cheap feeling with the synthetic material, it's covering the actual like lino weave type of material. So I don't think you'll have a lot of issues with durability or the like material ripping or anything like that. But again, here in the toe box, it's really thin, and now that it's broken in, it's like really soft. It can force my foot extremely well, but still like it doesn't stretch too much, you know, especially with these overlays, you know, with the fused material. So it still has a pretty nice supportive feel. Like again, compared to the Sabrina 3, like look at this. Really thin, really soft, you know, also extremely cheap, and I feel like this material would, you know, obviously develop a hole extremely quickly. But here in the AR3, it feels way more supportive. Still pretty dang soft, not as soft, but still soft. you know what I mean? And also way better for durability, you know? Although again, this synthetic material does feel a little bit cheap, you know? And then here in the midfoot, it feels a little bit more glued down, but it's not like a super stiff material, you know? It's still like, now that it's broken in, it's a little bit softer, you know? Especially compared to the JB4. Like I was playing in this shoe, I was playing in the JB4 as well, and the JB4 is just so freaking stiff, you know what I mean? And then for the tongue, we have literally zero padding. So I don't know what it is with like Chinese companies nowadays, but a lot of the shoes, you know, for example, like the Gamma 1, the Sneakerverse Eclosion Type 2, you know, they like have no padding for the tongue, you know? So they did the same thing here in the AR3, literally zero padding. So it doesn't feel really cozy or comfortable at all on top of your foot, but obviously has a really nice kind of like minimal feel, right? It's also a half booty construction tongue, giving you a better overall one-to-one fit. And then here on the bottom of the tongue, we have some like triangular shaped cutouts for a little bit better airflow, but obviously that's not really gonna do too much. And then here in the ankle area, I would say it's like an average amount of padding, you know, like on the sides, kind of minimal, but then in the back of the shoe, it's like average, you know what I mean? So not super cozy or anything like that. And then here in the back of the shoe, we got like 3 spikes almost, you know what I mean? And then here in the all the way back, we got his logo. So it's pretty interesting looking, kind of like external heel counter almost, but yeah, it feels nice overall on foot. It has a little bit more of a supportive feel, you know, for how thin the material is. It does feel a little bit cheap for the synthetic material. The overall kind of like leno weave material feels kind of nice though, you know what I mean? So yeah, there is the upper there. Moving on to the fit. So I went true to size, and this shoe fits me pretty much perfectly, with the exception of the material being, I guess, a little bit on the more forgiving side of things, right? So lengthwise, I'm good to go. My toes are very, very close to the edge of the shoe. So if you want a really nice snug fit lengthwise, then you should be fine going true to size, right? Also, here in the toe box, like I said, it's weird because like when I'm kind of like standing, or I guess like if my foot is like flat, laying flat, it feels kind of snug, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel roomy at all, you know what I mean? But then because this kind of like, you know, woven material is on the softer side of things, and also kind of like it's pretty soft, I can curl my toes up a little bit, you know what I mean? So it's your typical kind of like mesh material feel in like your modern day basketball shoe. A lot of shoes have this type of feel here in the toe box, you know what I mean? So if you like that, then you'll like the AR3. If you want something a little bit like, for example, like the JB4, that shoe, that material is just so stiff and unforgiving that I can't curl my toes up at all, you know what I mean? So it's a very, very different feel here in the toe box. But yeah, again, it feels like the Sabrina 3 a little bit, but like the Sabrina 3 material is a lot more forgiving, a lot softer, you know? And then for the width, I would say it's like slightly narrow, you know, it's like really perfect. I can barely kind of extend my pinky toe out, you know, just a tiny bit, but more so it's like really, really snug there. It's not like squeezing super bad though. It's not like super narrow. It's just like slightly narrow for me. It's just a really nice fit. So yeah, overall going true to size, it's a really, really nice fit. And if you like to have a snug fit, with the exception of the toe box being a little bit more like forgiving, then you should be fine going true to size, right? So there's the fit there. Moving on to the support and lockdown. Also, support and lockdown was really nice in this shoe. Obviously, it's not like a super stiff, super like support heavy shoe compared to like, you know, the A2 or, you know, the JB4, the Harden Volume 9, you know what I mean, the Jordan 40s. However, for a guard shoe, and how responsive it is and how minimal and thin the upper is and like how soft the upper is, it's really good and adequate for sport, you know? Especially compared to a lot of Nike shoes, right? Like a lot of guard shoes from Nike, like the Sabrina 3, the Tatum 4, Tatum 3, the Jaw 2, the Luka 4, the Luka 77s, you know? They all have a really soft upper. You know, look at this, right? But still like adequate for support, for me at least, you know? And then the AR3 is a little like a step higher than that, you know? So for lateral containment, I was good to go. My foot is not coming out of the footbed. Obviously, if you're gonna be making a basketball shoe, you need to have a lateral counters, you know? You need lateral support. I guess besides if you're really just like a spot up shooter or a catch and shoot guy, you don't need it as much, but you're still doing cuts, so you would still need lateral support at least a little bit, you know? Like for most people, I guess if you're like, you know, posting up a little bit, not as much, kind of, but you still kind of need it if you're going like sideways, you know what I mean? So yeah, if you're gonna be making a basketball shoe, you need good lateral support, at least a little bit, you know? And the AR3 has really nice lateral support. You know, you got this plastic material, you know, with this gold color. It looks almost like teeth, but it's apparently it's influenced by a serrated knife, which is, well, I don't see that at all, you know. But anyways, that's there. You got the synthetic material on the upper as well, adds a little bit to the support too. So my foot's not coming out of the footbed, but also like my foot is kind of like well contained inside of the shoe too, you know what I mean? Like my foot's not moving too much with the softer material. I mean, obviously, again, it's not as crazy as like the JB4 or something like that, but it was good for me, you know. And then also here in the heel, we got the external heel counter and an internal one as well. So lateral containment, very good for me. I feel like most people, you should be good to go as well. And then, you know, we got a very nice wide base. You know, it's a pretty crazy outrigger. You know, you can see just how much it protrudes out. So lateral stability was good for me. Overall, the heel lockdown was great. And when I really cranked on the laces, like my foot was very locked into the shoe. You know what I mean? Even more so than the Sabrina 3. Where again, the Sabrina 3 was adequate for me and adequate for most people, you know? So yeah, support and lockdown is pretty dang good here in the AR3. Again, not great or amazing for support if you need like a really stiff feeling shoe, but adequate for most people, I would say, and for me. So, and now moving on to the weight of the shoe. Yeah, this shoe is freaking like pretty dang light, but not super duper lightweight, right? So it comes in at 12.05 ounces. Let's check the other shoe. It comes in at 12.05 ounces. So the average weight of my shoes is around 12.5 ounces for like a long time ago. I guess like just average weight for weighing like all my hoop shoes, you know what I mean? But for like the last couple years, shoes have been getting extremely light. So I think like the average now is around 12 ounces. So I would say like the AR3 is pretty average, you know? But it feels extremely responsive and it's not bulky at all, you know what I mean? Like for example, like the AR2, where's the AR2? The AR2 is, although it's not bulky at all, it has a bulkier feel with like, you know, all this right over here, you know what I mean, with the actual midsole and like this plastic piece kind of protruding out. The AR3 doesn't really do that as much and it just feels really streamlined. It feels, again, like very minimal. It's not bulky at all, but also really responsive, right? The traction is really good. The cushion is low to the ground, but still like comfortable, especially for the underfoot cushion, you know what I mean? So that felt good. And then the upper is really thin. So it, again, it doesn't feel bulky at all, but adequate for support too. And the shoe overall has a little bit more of a stiffer feel, but still able to flex. So it still has like it still has a nimble feel, but a little bit more explosive, springier almost than a shoe like the Sabrina 3 and stuff like that. So yeah, I felt really quick and responsive when I was playing in this shoe. And now moving on to the ventilation. Ventilation is pretty good. You know, you have a good amount of airflow through the top of the toe box here. Not as much here on the sides though because of the overlays. But also here on the bottom of the tongue, not too much, you know what I mean? But again, it's a pretty minimal, like very thin material. So I would say it's better than average, but not like amazing. For example, like the Joker 1 SE, you know? So yeah, so pretty good for the ventilation. Moving on to the durability, I feel like again it'll be pretty good, especially compared to like, you know, the Sabrina 3, the Tatum 4. I mean, like it doesn't feel like it'll rip or anything, but just the quality feels bad, you know. The Tatum 3 quality was pretty dang bad. Luka 4 durability didn't seem very good. Again, with this, it feels like it'll have better durability for the upper. Also for the traction, it feels really durable too. So it feels like, again, it'll be pretty dang good. It'll last you a good amount of time. And moving on to the aesthetics, again, it's not my favorite though. I do really like this color. You can't go wrong with like a black, white, and gold colorway, but the overall like design of the shoe is okay. You know what I mean? I feel like the AR2 looks a lot better in my personal opinion. So tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, this is a really nice, solid performer. I would say borderline top tier for me. You know, there's really nothing I hated about the shoe. It's a great guard shoe. And again, I would say it has a little bit more support, springiness, and cushion compared to a lot of Nike kind of guard shoes. You know what I mean? So if you, I'm saying Nike because, you know, Nike's very popular. A lot of people have tried like the Sabrina 2, 3, Tatum's, you know, Lukas, and Jaws, you know what I mean? So yeah, if you're a guard, this is a great shoe, especially if you can catch it on sale and get a good price on it. It's a really great underrated shoe. Again, like the AR2 was such a great performer as well. Super underrated, you know? And I feel like the same thing here for the AR3, but it has a little bit less cushion. It's lower to the ground and it feels a little bit, you know, less bulky and also a little bit more flexible, especially on the bottom of the shoe. The AR2 is actually kind of stiff. I mean, so, you know, so a little bit of a different feel, but still nonetheless a great performer. So, and also if you're a bigger dude, I feel like you can get away with it. You know what I mean? If you don't need a crazy amount of support, you want like a a shoe that, you know, is a pretty minimal feel, but still has pretty nice cushion, then I feel like you bigger dudes, you should be fine. I don't think it would be the best option, but I feel like you can make it work. But I would say more so obviously for guards. So anyways, that about concludes my performance review of the AR3. Really nice performer. I enjoyed playing in the shoe thoroughly. Again, the only thing I would say is the dust performance. I wish it was a little bit better. But again, you know, when I was playing on the LA Fitness course, I really didn't have any issues with this shoe. So anyways, that about concludes my performance review. Again, if you guys do want to cop, I'll try to leave in the free link in the description box. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.